Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's my pleasure and honor to give a keynote speech in the conference organized by the KDIS School and World Bank. So in today's talk, I will talk about the value of using the lab in the field experiment for impact evaluation in the international development settings, and also I will do so by presenting the two studies that I have been collaborating with other people. So as you know, that impact evaluation plays a key role in accumulating evidence on the effectiveness of the development interventions. And a variety of the quantitative tools has been used for the impact evaluation. For example, like the randomized control trial, and also the quasi-experimental tools such as difference in differences, and also the regression-based tool. And often we collect the surveys before the intervention and also the interventions. On the other hand, there are growing interest of using lab in the field experiment for policy discussions. And in this talk, I would like to make the case for the use of the lab in the field experiment in order to enrich the scope and method of the development impact evaluations. And as I said, I will do so by presenting the two studies on which I have collaborated, luckily, with highly talented researchers. So I will actually organize my talk in terms of the two perspectives about how to use the lab in the field experiment in these settings. And then the first perspective is about the measurement. Actually, in every policy intervention, we actually have a set of targeted final results. And we often collect this final result through the admin data or the survey data. I would like to claim that actually if we use the lab in the field experiment, we can actually enrich a set of final results we can expect from the policy interventions. And also we can use a lab in the field experiment in order to understand mechanisms of treatment effect through measurement of often unobservables, which is often hardly measurable by traditional method of data collections. The second perspective is about identifications. Apart from whether the policy intervention was randomly assigned or not, we can also use the lab in the field experiment in order to create the random assignment within this experiment for understanding the causal impact of the same elements of the policy interventions. So with these two perspectives in mind, I will introduce the two projects that I have been working on. So the first project is about the education interventions and the quality of the decision makings, which was which is the joint work with Hyunchul Brian Kim from Cornell University and also Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and Buyol Kim from Seoul National University, and Christian Pope Ilakis from Columbia University. So as we all know that the schooling or education influences a wide range of outcomes for the people, including the financial returns in the labor market, as well as non-pecuniary returns, including the health, crime, marriage, and parenting. There is a growing evidence on this benefit. So not surprisingly, organizations such as World Bank and also the researchers around the world have made a significant effort to understand the effectiveness of the different education interventions. So for example, in the 2018, the World Bank make a publication about through the World Bank World Development Report entirely dedicated to the education outcomes. And also the Ganimian and the Monet in the 2016 had extensive reviews about the education intervention in the low-income countries. And then they actually sort of summarize what kind of tools, education interventions are effective or not. But if you think about these financial returns and the non-financial benefits of the schoolings, there is, in the literature, there is one little explored hypothesis is that education might improve the people's general ability of decision making, and that leads people to make a better decision across different domains like the labor market and also health sector and within the household decision making throughout their lifetime. So in order to explore this kind of hypothesis, we combine the randomized controlled trial of providing financial support for education in low-income countries, about 2,400 students. And also we introduced the laboratory experiment of measuring the quality of decision-making, which I have been working on in the 2007 and also 2014. So let me give you a little bit of details about the field setting. So we implemented the financial support interventions in the 4 rural districts of the Lilongwe in Malawi. And we target around 2,800 secondary female students in the 9th and the 10th grade. So the 9th graders is the starting year of the secondary year, secondary schooling in Malawi, and the 10th grader is actually second year. And we approached 33 public schools and 124 classrooms, and then we did the classroom level randomization in the academic year 2011 and 2012. Throughout the 1-year intervention, we provide 1-year tuition support and also the monthly stipend as long as they stay in school. So it has a conditional cash transfer program aspect. So let me give you a little bit of details about the education system in Malawi. So before secondary schooling, it's mandatory so that the government provides full support to the student. However, from the secondary school, parents and the student need to pay their tuitions. So that there is a significant dropout in the beginning of the secondary year. And that's kind of a big issue in Malawi. So we conduct the baseline survey and also the admin data collections and also the main follow-up surveys. And in the main follow-up survey, we conduct the lab experiment to measure the economic rationality or the quality of the decision making. And we did a quick balance check, and then the randomization was done okay. And let me first to show you the results about the direct impact on the education outcome. So since the intervention is about the education, financial support, we should expect it has a direct impact on the education outcome. So the impact that we focus on the absence rate and also dropout rate, and also whether to take the junior certificate exam, which is a national exam, in the second year of the secondary schooling, and also whether they pass these exams, and also the total years of education. As you can see here, the panel A is actually pulling the 9th grader and 10th grader. Panel B is only for the 9th grader who just started the second year. And the panel C is a 10th grader. As you can see that the most direct impact of this intervention on the education outcomes are on the 9th graders and not on the 10th grader. The one interpretation of this result is that because the secondary school is not mandatory, the parents need to pay the money. So that at the very beginning of the secondary school, because of some financial constraint, students actually drop out. But when it's provided financial support, actually we lowered this dropout rate so that they can stay longer. However, at the time of our intervention, those who are in the second year, in the 10th grade, this group of people already, those who has a financial constraint already dropped out in the first year, so that those who only stay in schools are remaining in our sample. So there is some kind of the compositional difference between the 9th grader and the 10th graders. So this is a quick summary. The major takeaway point is that the intervention affects mainly the 9th graders. So we can expect that if the impact of intervention on rationality, if there is such an impact, then we can expect that impact probably more likely to occur in the 9th grader than the 10th grader. So what kind of the lab experimental tool we used? We used this kind of the choices on the options along the budget line in the risk domain and then also the time domain. And we actually repeat this kind of decisions 20 times with the price variations. Not only for the risk domain, also the time domain. And then with this kind of data, we can actually study how rational their decisions are within decision making in the risk domain and also in the time domains. And the simple way of conducting this kind of the test of the rationality is based on the revealed preferences or the generalized axiom of the revealed preference. The main idea is that, for example, in this graph, as when the X was chosen in a steep budget line, Y was available. So because of this, Y was available, X actually, the choice of X reveals that X is more directly preferred to the Y. And on the other hand, when there is on the more flatter budget line was presented, this hypothetical individual choose Y when the X was available. So then that means that the Y was directly preferred to X. And there is just some inconsistency between these two statements, so that's kind of the constitute of the violation of the rationality. One way of eliminating this violation is that actually we can adjust the budget line and then sort of basically wasting some money from the budget, and then in order to eliminate this violation. And in the literature, the Sydney Appariat sort of proposed an index called the critical cost efficiency index. I call the rationality index, which basically constructs how much money you have to waste in order to eliminate such kind of the violations. So if there is no violation, then this index is equal to 1. When there is a violation, this index will be below 1. So that this index is a smaller. Means that actually the violation is more severe. So in that way, we can actually have a rationality index ranging between 0 and 1. 1 is perfect rationality. The smaller it is, the larger violation this person makes. I have a 2014 papers basically applying this tool in the general population, in the representative sample of the general population in the Netherlands. And what I found is that, as you can see that, across different socio-demographic groups, we find a substantial correlation. For example, like the older people make a more inconsistent choice than the younger people. And low income, low education people actually make a less rational choices than the better educated people. The one thing that I want to highlight with this Dutch sample is that those who just completed primary school is the in this kind of the in the hyperbolic in the circle line, those who completed only the primary school and those who has a college degree, there is around 3-point differences in terms of rationality index. I will actually, please remember this number. I will get back to this when I present the results from the Malawi. And let me show you what I found from the Malai studies. So the panel A is pulling 9th grader and 10th grader, and the panel B is only for the 9th grader, and the panel C is a 10th grader. And then I would like to highlight this red square, which is actually high rationality group. And then this bar graph is showing the frequencies of this high rationality group between the treatment group who receive the financial support and those control groups in the control group. And the dark blue is a treatment group, and the light shaded sky blue color is a treatment, the control group. And what you can see is that when you pull the 9th grade and 10th grader, there is some differences between the treatment and then the control group. But that difference is mainly coming from the 9th grader. So that our financial intervention improve the frequencies of the people who scored the rationality index in a very rational way. So if we conduct some kind of the treatment effect regression analysis, so let's look at the panel A is from the risk domain and the panel B from the time domain. Let's focus on the risk domain, which is the top upper part of the table. And let me only focus on the 9th grader, which is the panel A2. And different columns is about the different specifications of different controls in the treatment effect regression analysis. But the first one is without any control. And what you can see is that there is 3 percentage point differences between the treatment group and the control group. Which this number I emphasized from the Dutch sample. In the Dutch sample, between those who complete only the primary school and those who complete the college degree, there was a 3-point differences in terms of rationality index. Now, in the Malawi, when we provide 1-year financial support, we generate the 3 percentage point in the rationality index, such differences. And as you go along the specification, you can recognize that, for example, in the column 8, when we control everything, there was about the 1/3 drop in this coefficient. And this 1/3 drop is mainly coming through the changes of the cognitive ability and the personality through education support. Now let me move on. So that through this first study, I think when you talk about the impact of the education impact, we often focus on the direct impact, which is the educational outcome, or sometimes some kind of the labor market outcomes, and also some kind of health outcome. But I would like to claim that if you also think about the quality of decision making or the ability of decision making people can make exercise throughout their lifetime, and this quality ability of decision making can be improved through the education intervention, then potential benefit of the financial intervention may be much larger than when you typically expect by focusing on the direct impact of the education interventions. Now, the second study is about the community development and the competition effects. And this is a joint work with Michelle Yoon Jae-dong from KDIS School, and Buyeo Kim from the Seoul National University, and Taejong Kim from KDIS School, and Hee-seung Yang from Yonsei University. So this project is about the community-driven rural development approaches. And as you know that this approach has been a key strategy to reduce poverty in the low-income countries. As of early 2019, according to World Bank, there are around 200 active CDD projects in the 78 countries, and the total budget is about 20 billion US dollar. On the other hand, the Korean International Cooperation Agency, which is KOICA, provide a massive financial support to 5 Southeast Asian countries between 2014 and 2019 to implement the Korean version of the CDD model, which is called the Semaurundong, or the New Village Movement, if we literally interpret it. So at the moment, why I call the Korean CDD, Korean version of the CDD, there is one particular aspect of this CDD project which is different from, which is novel feature compared to the traditional community-driven development project widely used also in the World Bank. And then we pick up that key feature and then introduce some random assignment in order to evaluate the causal impact of this feature. We select the Myanmar and Cambodia for program evaluations, and in the Myanmar, the program covered 100 villages, and Cambodia 30 villages, and the total budget is 22 million US dollar in Myanmar and $8 million in Cambodia. And in the Myanmar, the 100 villages are across 9 regions and states, and also in Cambodia is 30 villages in the 3 provinces. And if you map those villages, we can actually see like this. On the left, you can see treatment villages from this program along these 9 different regions and states. And on the right-hand side, you can see 3 provinces are selected for these interventions in Cambodia. So the novel feature of this Korean version of the CDD project is that throughout the 5-year interventions, every year, these countries, the government in the beneficiary countries, and also the KOICA, and also the other institutions regularly visit each villages of these treatment villages and then evaluate their performances according to the following criterion. Like the first one is whether they improve their living environment. And then second, they actually create or generate the income increase. And also whether they had a capacity building for their villagers. And based on these evaluations, the CDD fundings was allocated on a competition basis, and we call this is inter-village competition. And this is as far as I know, this is kind of the novel feature of this Korean CDD project compared to other traditional CDDs. And whether this inter-village competition has an impact on the people's welfare and also the performance of these programs. And this is kind of our motivation of this. So if I give you a little bit of background about how these criterions are used for evaluating their performances, the first one is about the improvement of living environment. As you can see that on the left-hand side, there is a lot of activities. And these photos are actually taken by either the government or the KOICA or some institution which monitor this project. And there is a different evaluation criterion, for example, like a percentage of project work completed in a year basis on an original plan, and also the villagers' monetary and then non-pecuniary contribution to this project. The second point is about the income generation. So we also this project encouraged the microfinance of their production and then also the selling and their productions. And then there are different criterions on this. And then the final one is a capacity building. And one of the key points is that how often they had the village-wide meetings about this project, and then sort of they share the information between the village leaders and also the ordinary members in the village. So with this, for example, in the Myanmar, starting from the 2016, in the first year, each village received $20,000 as a lump sum payment for the first year. And then from the second year, in the 2017, now we can have their evaluations on their performances, so that we can rank the 100 villages into the 3 different categories, like the rank A, rank B, and the rank C. Rank A is a top performing group, and the rank C is the lowest performing group. And according to that, the top performing group received the $40,000 in the second year. Low performing group only received $20,000. That was repeated in the 2018, and also continued in the 2019 as well. And the similar thing happens in the Cambodia. So that inter-village competition is kind of key aspect. So let me give you a little bit of idea what sort of what kind of things are correlate with the village's performances. And the one variable that we are interested in is actually the variables about the level of social capital within the villages. So in the baseline data, before the intervention, we collect the major characteristics of the randomly sampled household and their self-reported social capital. So the question is, does a village with a higher level of social capital performs better? So in order to study this, we focus on whether the village is rank the highest group in the 2 consecutive first years, in the first 2 consecutive years, and also we look at which village is actually lowest performing villages in the 2 consecutive years. So that the first 3 columns, 1 to 3, is the indicator variable, is whether the village is a high performing group in the first 2 years. The next 3 columns is whether village is the lowest performing group in the first 2 years. As all, you can see that the trust index, collective action index, social cohesion index are all positively correlated with high performing group, and then negatively correlated with the lowest performing groups. So through that, actually, we can interpret that in order to implement a community-driven development project, the villages actually need to mobilize people and then actually make the local public good provisions. But in order to do that, actually, the level of social capital may play a key role. So then our question is, what is the role of inter-village competition in solving collective action problems? Probably the best thing is that when the KOICA and the Myanmar government and the Cambodia government select the treatment villages, if that treatment assignment was done randomly across between the control group and then treatment village, that would be the best scenario. But at the time when I joined for the impact evaluation for this study, that wasn't possible, right? It was already decided by the KOICA and the government. So that without this kind of random assignment, as you all know that, in order to evaluating the impact of this project is very, very challenging. So what it did at that time is actually, instead of attempt to evaluate this comprehensive package of this Korean version of the CDD project, let's only focus on this inter-village competition. And then within the lab in the field experiment, let's generate the random assignment, and then with a feature of the inter-village competitions. And then evaluate the causal impact of these inter-village competitions. That's the kind of our main idea. So we use incentivized controlled lab in the field experiment, and we implement within village RCTs. Basically, every treatment villages, as well as also we selected control villages just adjacent to the 새마을운동 villages. And then in each village, we randomly assign the village members between the two experimental tasks with inter-village competition and without inter-village competitions. So in Myanmar, we had 100 villages, treatment villages, and then 50 non-SMU, non-treatment control villages. So there was in total 150 villages. And from there, we sample 8,500 households. In Cambodia, we have in total 6 villages, and we sample 3,500 households. So 2 collective action problems we focus on is actually public provisions. As you can see from in order to make a new road, the people actually come and then make a positive contributions. And also the second one is about the joint investment and risk reductions. So the one key feature of the microfinance project is that actually this project was not done by alone. It's actually done by a group of people together. So that's kind of the joint investment, and by doing so, they can reduce probably potential the risk, and also they share the risk together. So how can we sort of mimic this kind of the real life features into our lab in the field experiment? We actually selected 2 games. The first game is a village donation game, and the second is a joint investment game. Village donation game is basically try to replicate the contribution to the villages, activity like a contribution to the villages. So what it is actually for each household member, they receive, for example, in the Myanmar, they received 1,500 Myanmar kyat, and then and when they receive this, we actually give them this money in the envelope of you, so that people actually have this 1,500 Myanmar kyat in that envelope. And then we also give another envelope, which is a village fund, joint fund. We ask them whether how much they're willing to contribute to the village joint fund. Once we collect this money, we actually give this money to the village. We transfer this money to the village joint fund, so that this money is literally go to the village joint fund for the public project. So then the people know that. And through this, we measure how much they are willing to contribute the village joint project. And then that's kind of the one feature. Another one is joint investment game. Is actually basically we form a group of the 14 people and then ask how much of their endowment they want to contribute to the joint project, between joint project and then their personal consumptions. The feature of this game is that the more people contribute to the public joint project, the probability of this project being successful actually increases. And they're like this. So for example, like on the x-axis, there is the number of people who contribute to the joint project. And then y-axis, we have a probability of successful this joint project. So the more people contribute, then it's more likely that this project will succeed. This both game has a collective action problem in the sense that the socially efficient outcome is that the villagers actually make all the contribution to the village joint fund, or all the contribution to the joint investment. In each of these games, we ask people, we randomly assign the people in the two settings. One setting, whether they do this without competitions, or they do this with the inter-village competition. For example, in the village donation games, within each village, one group of people are doing this village donation game with the competition. When do they competition is actually, we tell them, at the end of the game, at the end of the survey, we will compute the average donation for each village. And then among the 150 villages, we rank these 150 villages in terms of the average donations. And those top 50 villages with highest donation amount, we will give them additional bonus, which is 100,000 Myanmar kyat. For the second group, we give the 50,000 Myanmar kyat, and then the bottom 50, there will be no support. And this feature is basically we replicate the inter-village competition for the CDD fundings. So what we found from the inter-village competition on the CDD from the village donation game and the joint investment game is that basically for the Myanmar, we first observed very high rate of contribution to the village joint fund in Myanmar. However, that rate is very low in Cambodia, which you can see at the bottom of the table, the mean of the dependent variable. On the treatment effect, actually we found no effect in Myanmar. However, in Cambodia, we find some competition effect for the Semarundong villages for this treatment effect. Now, when we move to the joint investment game, we actually found this competition effect both in Myanmar and Cambodia. However, the impact is larger in Cambodia. And we wondered why there is such a difference between the competition effect between the Myanmar and Cambodia, and then we came to this kind of the data about World Giving Index. So this World Giving Index is actually ranked the countries in terms of how charitable those countries are. And as you can see that Myanmar's from the 2014 and the 2017, the highest ranked country in terms of World Giving Index. On the other hand, Cambodia is one of the lowest countries, as you can see. And if you visit the Myanmar, and then you actually find that the Myanmar is actually the strong Buddhist country, and you can see the temples and pagodas and the people. It is kind of daily life cultures that the people are making a donation to the temples, and probably also the other people as well. So this giving is very widespread culture in Myanmar. And I think that is reflected in our village donation game, which is the villagers in the Myanmar contribute at a very high rate. So because of this kind of giving culture differences between the Cambodia and the Myanmar, we might expect this kind of differences between these two countries. So let me conclude my talk. So by presenting the two projects using the lab in the field experiment for the impact evaluation in the development settings, I would like to claim that the lab in the field experiment can complement the traditional tools of impact evaluation. And we can actually think of this problem in terms of the measurement issue and also the identification issue. I hope to expect more innovative collaborations among the experimental researchers and also the policymakers and then the practitioners. Thank you very much.
a kind of specific question about the Malawi project.
Yeah.
What do they learn in 9th grade? It's that moderation of the cognitive ability that makes me wonder if there's something they're learning specifically in 9th grade that the effect of learning it is actually correlated with their cognitive ability. So I'm just curious what exactly it is they're learning.
So the Buyer is actually at the end of this whole, and he can give a better answer for that. But this intervention is not about the particular learning program. It's actually the financial support for the student to stay in school, so not dropping out. So by actually giving the financial support for 1 year, we are actually expecting them to stay in school and then follow their curriculums. But this program doesn't target any specific aspects of the curriculum. So the question is whether there is an increase in the schooling or increase in some educational outcome, whether that can be transferred to the general ability of the decision casting. That's kind of the decision making, and that's our question.
I understand that. I guess I'm just wondering whether there's something specific about 9th grade that is leading to these outcomes you see.
Okay.
And the thing that makes me wonder that specifically is because of the moderation, the fact that cognitive ability moderates the effects that you find. So that's why I was
yeah, okay. Thank you. Josh, I think that's a very good question, actually. As I said in the talk, the ninth grade is a starting year of the secondary schooling, and the secondary schooling is not mandatory. So the parents need to pay the tuitions. But these are the very poor countries, so that I think more than 50% of the students actually drop out of the school in the 9th grade. So through our interventions, we actually retain them to stay in school. And I think that's kind of the major channel of this, the intervention impact. In our data, we have a 10th grader who already passed the first year. And they are we don't find any treatment effect in that group. And I think that can explain why this intervention at the start of the secondary schooling is important. Thank you.
Please remember, we only have 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to make my question short. Hi, Professor Choi. Thank you very much for really interesting research. I don't know much about the experimental research experiments, but I'm trying to learn. And my question was, you compared the village joint fund for the Myanmar and Cambodia and sort of concluded the reason why Myanmar received higher contribution was because of their culture of donation giving. Right. I'm wondering if the citizens of the village perceive that the village joint fund may be spent not in an efficient or effective manner, that could also lead to them not providing the fund. So I was wondering if that was also sort of captured through survey or through some other ways.
Thank you very much for the very good comment. Actually, that's indeed maybe the case. Actually, the Myanmar, we only have anecdotal evidence about the Myanmar village and the Cambodia. When we visit these two countries, the Myanmar village is actually very active. So villagers are very active for this joint project, whereas in Cambodia it's less active. I think there is some kind of the cultural differences. The Cambodia has a significant the experience of this the massacre, the killing field example. So in Myanmar, we heard that there is a culture that often in the village, the gathering the people together there is some kind of a reservation from the people because of some kind of historic experiences. So I think that's kind of the only suggestive things, but there may be the case that if the villagers believe that their contribution can be well used, then they are more likely to contribute. However, if they expect that their contributions are not well used, and they have less willing to contribute. I think that could be also another reason why there is high frequency contribution rate in Myanmar than in Cambodia. Thank you very much. Thank you.